There's not a time that I remember when I did not know that the gospel was true. I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina, literally in the middle of nowhere. We used to call it God's country because he was the only one who could get there and back without getting lost. We were always engaged in church, a church that was really good at sharing the gospel, at telling you how on a given Sunday you could come to know Jesus as your Savior and be saved. What I think I really missed as a kid and growing up in that environment was what happens after that. I grew up believing that God was calling me to ministry, which was unusual. We had no pastors in the family, but it was my sense, even as a relatively young child, that this is what God wanted me to do. I was always very intellectual in that I read, but that was totally distinct from my faith, and the life of the mind as part of loving God was not particularly taught. It created in me a kind of a dualistic mindset. I had certain things that I believed and I engaged in, but I had this whole other part of life that I didn't know what to do with. I was in school for pre-med because God and I were having an argument. I knew he wanted me to teach, but I really didn't want to teach. And in my sort of perverted 19-year-old logic, I couldn't teach because I was a hypocrite. But I could go serve and that would be fine and God would be happy. So I was going to be a medical missionary. Every time I went to a pre-med class, I was reminded that I was not where I was supposed to be. This is not what God wanted. I knew he wanted me to teach. So, like a wise 19-year-old, I stopped going to class. The easiest thing to do to avoid this argument that I was having with God. I came to realize that I had locked myself away with this preposterous idea that God didn't really know what was going on in my heart. I couldn't tell him what was actually happening inside. But then I began to read in Galatians in particular, you start by faith, you live by faith. I really began to see a more integrated approach to life. I began to understand the life of the mind as it connects with my life of faith, to be able to think robustly. And we sort of relegated that to the world of academics. And I think that's one of our fundamental flaws as a culture. As we said that if you're in academia, it's your job to think and to think deeply, your job to be more intellectual about your pursuits. When in fact, I look at the scriptures and there are all sorts of places in which everyday people are deeply intellectual. They're deeply thoughtful. And so part of what we need is to say that's also part of our faith life as well, is to think deeply about the text, about what God has done, about theology, not to the exclusion of the heart, but alongside the heart in the way that they work together. The whole reason he has revealed himself to us is so that we would respond to him appropriately and honoring him by cherishing the word he's given us, by thinking deeply about the way he's revealed himself, by understanding its connection to who we are and how we love one another. All those things signal to him that we honor and love him and we value him because he's called us to love God with our minds. It is an act of worship. It is an act of love. But God is always training us, as Paul would say, from one place of glory to the next. We believe that we'd never stop learning because we'll never be able to fully understand who he is and what he's done for us. But we're grateful for each little bit that we get to understand every day.